Hello and shalom, brothers and sisters in Messiah Yeshua. Welcome back. I'm Jeremy, and this is Megalithic Millenium. This is going to be part 2 to Millennial Day 2 of creation, and it's going to be a teaching that takes us around to many megalithic sites around the world, showing you the things that I've found over the past 15 years while studying them and the Bible and how they correlate, and I want to share these things with you. Now, this teaching is going to be very in-depth. There's going to be a lot of slides, and most of them are going to be pictures, and we're going to talk about some of these things. I will be using some scriptures and extra biblical books as we go forward, but please don't let that deter you. Just get through the whole thing and take your questions, and let's reason together at the end. So with that said, let's get started. Quick overview of Millennial Day 2. Because we're going to be talking still about this day. On the literal day 2, God created the firmament, which is our breathable atmosphere, and He separated the waters below from the waters above. Because of that firmament, that ball of water was able to start evaporating up into the atmosphere and creating either a giant cloud around our earth or a giant water bubble, which had most of the water up in the atmosphere, and the earth was only 14% water then. And then on Millennial Day 2, what happens is the flood takes place, and so all that water that was up in the atmosphere, it says the fountains of the great deep broke open and the windows of heaven. So that water came back down and it flooded the whole earth again, giant bubble of water, and the only thing floating on it this time was Noah's Ark. And then shortly after, that water started to evaporate back up into the atmosphere, and the water started to recede back into the fountains of the great deep, and just like it was before on day 2. Only this time now the water up in the atmosphere is nowhere near as much. As we can see, there's only patchy clouds now, whereas before there was a big water bubble all around the earth. And we have 70% water now, not 14%. All right, and the last thing we talked about was the habitation, right? The bet is the Hebrew letter for 2, and it means tent or house or habitation, dwelling. And that's where our dwelling, our home, because the Bible says that God has given the man, the earth is his dwelling. It was changed. But we're also going to look at this thing, this dwelling, and something else that happens with this habitation in this teaching. All right, so here we go. Let's get started. Genesis 6:1, talking about Millennial Day 2, it says, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, that daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Now I know there's many teachings about this, and there's much controversy about who the sons of God are and the daughters of men. But what we're going to do is look at all the evidence, and all the evidence around the world as well, and come to a conclusion to see, is this what is being taught? And so, bear with me, let's get through this. Genesis 6:4, "And there were giants, or Nephilim, or Nephal, in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown." All right, so these giants in the earth, I know there's people that say, well, they were just kings or high people of stature, or were they really giants, like men, flesh and blood men that were giants, like 30 feet tall or 10 feet tall? Well, let's look at the evidence as we go through this teaching and the daughters of men. All right, but before we get started, I want to answer a couple quick questions. Did Israel build the pyramids? There's a lot of people out there that are teaching this, that Israel built the pyramids when they were in Egypt. Or they say, are the pyramids the Tower of Babel? Okay, let's see what the scripture says. So, brick at Babel. They were building with brick at Babel, not stone. And it says in Genesis 11:3, "And they said one to another, Go and let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone." So they weren't using stone. In all these megalithic sites around the world, they used stone, cut stone. And slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go and let us build us a city and a tower, whose top unto heaven, and let us make us a name. I'm pointing that out, that us very much is because they're going to make themselves a city and themselves a name. It's very important as we move forward. So keep that in mind, that they wanted to build themselves a name and a city for themselves. They wanted to build it, lest we be scattered upon the face of the whole earth. All right, so that was in Babel. They were using brick for stone. And the children of Israel here in Exodus 5:7, it says, "You shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as therefore let them go and gather straw for themselves. There is no straw given unto thy servants. And they said to us, Make brick. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault's within thine own people." So here the children of Israel, while they were in Egypt, they were making mud brick with straw. So let's take a look at this. This is a picture I took in Egypt of mud brick. And if you look at the picture to the left, you can see right in there that there is straw. And I'm going to try and make this so you guys can see that in the video. I'll make it a larger resolution, so hopefully that'll work. But you can see the straw there built right into the brick. And this is what the children of Israel were making. And then you can see it's covered with mortar. Well, if you look over to the right, you can see these stones that are cut and fit together very well. And you can see there's debris that's pushed right up against it, okay, and on top of it. And then if you look just to the left of it, you can see that debris is kind of pushing those blocks over. Well, those blocks had to be there before that debris got there. And same here, you've got these other types of mud brick, and then there's these other stones built on top of them. So here we see several different layers of different types of technique, and you can see that the megalithic stone over there to the right was there first. Okay. And then the second was the debris, and then you can see this was thirdly built later. Everywhere when you go in Egypt, you're going to see it's buried, and there's different types of building techniques from different ages. And the oldest one are these megalithic stones that fit together so perfect, and everything's either covering it or built on top of them. All right, so we answered who, Tower of Babel and pyramids were not built by the children of Israel, but we'll get into who built them later. But also I've heard this, that Israel built Petra. And so let's look at that. Did Israel build Petra? So here's me at the monastery. If you don't know, this is in Petra. It's one of the higher points in Petra. It takes about 1,000 feet to get up there. And as you're walking through there, I want you to take a look at those pictures to the right. You can see as you're climbing up into this mountain, there's still a bunch of Petra that's buried, and it has not been unburied. Okay, so many pictures of these things you can see still buried, and they've put other bricks and stuff around them. They've made homes, but they don't dig them up. And just to show you how big that monastery is, here's one of the local Bedouins jumping on top of it. And I'm going to show you a picture. If you look in the background, you can see the mountains and how high and rugged they are. But here's me taking a picture from higher up. And you can see over here to the left, there's the monastery. And you just saw how big it was compared to that guy jumping on it. And now look at the atmosphere out there. If you see this little peak here, you can tell it's very high up. Same thing with this peak here, very high up. And so this is over 1,000 feet up in the mountain. And what I want to point out is this here. You see this weathering on the monastery? This weathering is from being buried for thousands of years and the heat cooking the rock. And you can see it going across here it's not straight, it's at an angle, and you can see that weathering there. Okay, that's because this place was buried. Well, how did it get buried way up there in the mountains, right? And did Israel build all this? Well, no, they couldn't have. Why? Because Petra is still 85% buried. If you just Google that, National Geographic says that they've only uncovered 15% of Petra. It's all still buried. So how did it get buried? Who buried it? They'll say that it was a local flood. That's what they'll tell you there. But how did a local flood get way up in the mountains? I showed you how high these are up here. Couldn't have happened. All right, so now where I'm taking that picture from behind me, I wanted to show you. You can see off to the right some striations, and off to the left, this is just another megalithic, whatever they were building, but it's destroyed. It's not completely finished, but it was destroyed, and so the whole face of it is open. And just for size comparison, there's a picture of me standing in it, so you can see kind of how large this thing is. All right, so I do not believe Israel built Egypt I do not believe Israel built Petra because it's megalithic in nature and it predates them, and it's still all covered very deep, even up in the mountains. And since the times of Israel, there's been no record of a giant local flood or anything that covered it. All right, and so same with Egypt. I want you to look at that weathering right there. That's the same thing that we saw in Petra on the monastery. It's because it was buried for thousands of years and only the head was uncovered. And so you can see how much well preserved the head was because it wasn't being cooked in that hot sand like this rock was here. So, who buried Egypt? Who buried Petra? And we're going to find that all through Egypt, these megalithic sites that we've found were one time buried. And as they started to dig it up in, I think, the 1920s. And as they dug it up, there's a stela that they found, and you can still see it there today. But it's not just Giza pyramids; it's all over Egypt. Here in Luxor, the buried, and not only buried, but a cataclysm, some sort of, very strong event destroyed these megalithic sites. Buried. More pictures of buried, up to the chest, buried. And you can see on top still some of it buried and other brick and stone put on top of it. And so this is what it looked like when they started to dig it up in the 1920s. But what I want to point out as well is that it wasn't buried by just blowing sand. It's rock and debris. If you go back and look at those pictures, and we'll see more. So how was it buried, and who built these megaliths? All right, well, I believe it was buried by the worldwide flood. All of these megalithic sites around the world, and I'm going to give you evidence for them, because we see what they are today, but we don't see what they were when they found them or before they found them. So let's go through some scriptures real quick and see what I believe is happening. But we'll start with the book of Jubilees. Building with stone before the flood. So in Jubilees 4:1 it says, "And at the close of this Jubilee, Cain was killed after him," speaking of Adam, "in the same year, for his house fell upon him, and he died in the midst of the house, and he was killed by its stones. For with a stone he had killed Abel, and by a stone was he killed in righteous judgment." Right? No matter what, it's very important to understand that his house was built with stone. So they were building with stone before the flood, not brick. Okay? And we'll see some of these coming up. Also in Jubilees 8:1 it says, "Arphaxad, who comes from the line of Shem," now this is after the flood, it says, "took to himself a wife, and her name was Rasu Ea, and she bare him a son, and called his name Canaan. And the son grew, and his father taught him writing, and he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city." Now this is from the righteous line of Shem. This guy's not going to go seize a city, like kill people and take it over and murder them. There were cities all over the place that were destroyed by the worldwide flood, and they were going to find them and take over the city. But we see at Babel, they didn't want to take over a city that had already been built. They wanted to make one for themselves, and they started with mud brick, trying to copy what they saw in these megalithic cities. And we're going to go on and we're going to see this, okay? So in Jubilees 8:3, and he says, "And he found a writing which former generations, before the flood, had carved on the rock. And he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owing to it, for it contained the teaching or the knowledge of the watchers." At every one of these megalithic sites around the world, there is stuff carved in the rock, pictures and pictographic languages. And this is telling us that those were carved before the flood by the watchers, or by the people that got the knowledge from the watchers, but it was before the flood. And after the flood, they would go and find themselves these cities and dwell in them, but not before the Tower of Babel, because they were all in one place at Babel before the flood. And we're going to see that in Megalithic, or in Millennial Day 3 of creation. We're going to talk about Babel then. But right now I want to just be aware that before the flood, this is telling us that they carved on rock, and that rock was the knowledge of the teachers, and that there were cities that were before the flood that they would go and find, that they're going to go and find after the flood. Okay. In Enoch, it says this, 16:2, and now, as to the watchers, this is the angels that were supposed to, remember, angels were always supposed to be watchers. They weren't supposed to make themselves known to man unless commanded to do so. They were just supposed to watch, and they have many jobs that they do in the heavens. But it says, who have sent thee to intercede for them. So this is speaking of Enoch, that the watchers are sending Enoch to intercede for them, because these watchers are no longer in heaven, they're on earth, and they're not allowed back in heaven. It said, who had been aforetime in heaven, who say to them, we have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you knew worthless ones. And these, in the hardness of your hearts, you have made known to the women, and through these mysteries, women and men work much evil in the earth. And so what this is telling us is that these angels had a knowledge, but it was a worthless knowledge. These mysteries, and the true ones that God had intended for his creation, had not yet been known to them. But they did have some knowledge, and they passed that worthless knowledge on to the men and women of the earth, which worked much evil in the earth. And we're going to see this, that the world before the flood was very corrupt, and like the Bible says, that the thoughts of the men's hearts were evil continually. All right, so with that said, right, at this point we know that there was these angels that were in heaven, and they came down on their own, and they were cut off from heaven. Now at that point they were not allowed back in. They're asking for God to Enoch to intercede for them, and they passed knowledge on to man. Okay, and also man is at this point living to be almost 1,000 years old. No one lives over 1,000, but almost 1,000. So my belief is that before there was a flood, there was a megalithic world. And this megalithic world that we see around the world, that we have to dig up because it's buried. In all of the sites that I go to, it's the same story. They don't really know who built it, why they built it, or how they built it, nor were they able to read the language on the wall. Some of them now, yes, but many of them still no. And even Egyptian, we weren't able to read until we had the Rosetta Stone. And we just read that, yes, some of them coming off of the flood knew those languages and taught them, but not everybody did. And so because of the Rosetta Stone, somebody knew that Egyptian language. And we're going to see this moving forward. All right, so megalithic world. Let's talk about the fallen, these angels that came down. Okay, so it says in Genesis 6:5, and Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And we will see that moving forward through some of these pictures that I'm about to show you. In Jubilees 4:4, okay, I just want to point out right now the time frame for when the angels came down, because many people think that maybe it was thousands of years. No, it was not. It was a very short time frame. It says in the 25th Jubilee. So the 25th Jubilee is from 1177 to 1225. Now the dating with Genesis and Jubilees does not add up, and I'll talk about that maybe later in a teaching about the calendars and stuff, but I'm not going to do that right now. The thing that I want to point out, though, is that both Genesis and Jubilees talk about the angels and the flood happening both in Millennial Day 2. So a period from 1,000 to 2,000 years is when both of them say that it happened in that day. So that's why we're talking about Millennial Day 2. Okay, it goes on to say, Noah took to himself a wife, and her name was Imzara, the daughter of Rachiel, and the daughter of his father's brother, in the first year, in the fifth week. And in the third year thereof she bare Shem. In the 5th year thereof she bare Ham. And in the first year, in the 6th week, she bare him Japheth. Now the reason why I put those names in those colors, white, black, and Japheth, it comes from the book of Enoch in the prophecy of the animals. It reads this, or the apocalypse of the animals, whatever you want to call it. It says, then the white cow, this is speaking of Noah, which became a man, went out of the ship, talking about the ark, and 3 cows with him. Those are the sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And it says, and one of the 3 cows was white, resembling that cow. One of them was red, and one as blood, and one of them was black, and the white cow left them. So it's a prophecy of the animals where it gives, it starts to give people pictures of animals as sheep, and like Israel is talked about as being as sheep and stuff, and also nations, different types of animals, whether they're clean animals or unclean. But here the white cow is Shem, the red cow is Japheth, and the black cow is Ham. And I find it interesting that in Egypt, if you go into the museum, they have this picture to the left, and it's a picture of this giant man who's holding these 3 men. And one is white, one's red, and one's black. And so I just find that interesting. Take it for what you want. I don't know what it says up there in the left. I haven't really looked into that, but if any of you know, go ahead and leave a comment. All right, moving on. In Jubilees 5:1, it says, and it came to pass when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. We've heard this through many books, not just Jubilees, Enoch, talking Dead Sea Scrolls. So many books talk about this event, that the angels of God saw. So it doesn't say the sons of God, it says the angels of God saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, the 25th Jubilee, that they were beautiful to look upon, and they took themselves wives of all whom they chose, and they bare unto them sons, and they were giants. So these children coming forth are something different than what we were created to be, and we're going to see this. All right, continuing on in Jubilees 5:30, it says, and Noah made the ark in all respects as he commanded him in the 27th Jubilee of years, in the 5th week, in the 5th year, on the new moon of the 1st month. So now at this point we're at 1307. And he entered in the 6th year, so now 1308, therein in the 2nd month, and on the new moon of the 2nd month. Okay, we're almost done here with the dating. And so in Jubilees 5:31 it says, and he entered in the 6th year, so 1308, thereof in the 2nd month, on the new moon of the 2nd month, till the 16th, and he entered, and all that he brought to him into the ark. And the Lord closed it from without on the 17th evening. And the Lord opened the 7 floodgates of heaven, and the mouths of the fountains of the great deep, the 7 mouths in number. So what I want to point out here is the flood's taking place in 1308. Okay? So if we look at when it says that the angels came and fell to the earth, it says from 1177 to 1225. So somewhere in that Jubilee, it doesn't say when. So if we start from the very beginning, 1177 to 1308, that's going to be 131 years. If we start from the very end, 1225 to 1308, that's going to be 83 years. So the angels were only on the earth doing what they were doing from 83 years to 131 years. I believe it was probably 120 years, and that's also a reference to when he says, my spirit, because his angels are also spirit, shall not always what? Strive with men, because their days are 120 years. So he gave them 120 years before the flood to do what they were going to do. All right, so keep that in mind as we go forward, that the people after Adam and Eve's sin and before the flood, there was over 1,000-year period that they were on earth without knowing that there were these angels or anything else, and they were just living regular lives, farming, doing whatever. And then the angels showed them their knowledge, and so their cities and everything else must have grown so rapidly. And that's what we see around the world, these megalithic sites, that many of them were unfinished and destroyed and just left. Where did everybody go? And so we're going to look at all this today and look at all the evidence, because it is there, and we need to, the Bible is 100% true, and we've got to show people what it says and what the real truth is out there. So come on, let's go. Jubilees 5:31, it says, next page. Enoch 54:7, it says, "And in those days shall punishment come from the Lord of spirits, and he will open all the chambers of the waters which are above the heavens, and of the fountains which are beneath in the earth, and all the waters shall be joined with the waters." Okay, that which is above the heavens is masculine, and the waters which beneath the earth is feminine. So keep that in mind. I'm going to share something interesting with you at the very end about those waters, masculine and feminine. "And they shall destroy all who dwell on the earth, and those who dwell under the ends of the heaven." So we have the book of Enoch, the book of Jubilees, the Bible, all these evidences telling us that these angels are going to be destroyed, and that there's punishment coming, and the world's going to be destroyed by a flood. So it's not just the Bible, there's all these other books out there. Okay. In Jude, right, it says, "And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day." So these angels were bound, and they are in chains, and we're going to see that. I'll show you the scriptures where it says that and what Jude is referring to. But not only that, their children, the Nephilim, they all died and were destroyed before the flood. And it says that their bodies were destroyed. So people say, well, why don't we find why don't we find these angels' bodies and stuff everywhere? And there are claims that people have found some of them, which maybe they have, but what we're going to read is it says that they were destroyed, that their bodies were completely destroyed before the flood. And there was wars you're going to see before the flood. And so let's keep going. We're almost to some of these pictures that I'll be showing you, so just stand by. Hebrews 1:7, and it says, "And the angels, he saith, who maketh his angels spirits." So his angels are spirits, okay, and his ministering angels a flame of fire. Same thing in Psalms. He maketh his angels spirits. And so I just want you to keep that in mind for this next verse in Enoch. So Enoch 15:8, it says, "Now the Nephilim," right, these are the children of the angels, "who have been born of the spirit," the angels, "and of flesh," the women, "shall be called upon the earth evil spirits," or demons. "And on the earth shall be their habitation. Evil spirits shall proceed from their flesh, because they were created from above," because of the watchers coming down. It says from the holy watchers. So they weren't created above, but they were created from above, from the watchers that came down. And it says, "was their beginning." So from the holy watchers was their beginning. Who? The Nephilim, or these children, these giants. "And primary foundation." It says, "Evil spirits shall they be upon the earth, and the spirits of the wicked shall they be called. The habitation of the spirits of heaven shall be in heaven, but the earth shall be the habitation of the terrestrial spirits who are born on the earth." So the heaven is for the eternal spirits. But because these Nephilim were created on earth, and not by the will of God, but against what he had done, it created these spirits within them. And so what we're going to see is they're destroyed, but their spirits remain on the earth. Okay? And they remain there, we're going to see, until the judgment. Now this is what Yeshua was referring to when he went to cast out Legion, and they said to him, "Are you going to cast us out before the time? Or have you come to judge us before the time?" it says. And he didn't. He cast them into the pigs because he didn't come to judge them yet, because the Father allowed them to dwell in the earth as evil spirits. And we talked about on the body, soul, and spirit teaching that when you walk in the evil side, in darkness, that the evil spirits can come upon you. But when you're walking in the light, in the good, in the love, that the evil spirits cannot come upon you, because Yeshua has reign and rule over the day, over you. But Hasatan has reign and rule over the evil spirits. All right, so continuing forward with that. In Enoch 16:1, right, this is going to be talking about the bodies of the Nephilim were destroyed before the flood, like we said. "And as to the death of the Nephilim, wheresoever their spirit depart from their bodies, let their flesh, that which is perishable, be destroyed before the judgment." Now this isn't talking about the end judgment, this is talking about the flood, okay? Because it goes on to say, "Thus shall they perish until the day of great consummation." Now that's the end judgment, so they get to continue until that time. And that's what we see in Revelation, that the lake of fire was created for Hasatan and his angels, right? And those spirits, they're going to be judged. And we're going to see here in a minute that the watchers, that they are bound until that time. I know people get that a little bit mixed up, that there's fallen angels on earth. There's not. All the fallen angels are bound. There are evil spirits from the Nephilim, when their bodies were destroyed before the flood, that they go through the whole earth. And we see Yeshua talking to those spirits all the time, casting them out of people, and because he tells them sometimes to sin no more, because if they do, that will open up the door for them even more to come back in. If you're continually walking in darkness, not if you just accidentally sin, repent, and continue on, but if you continue in it, and you've probably seen many people that just go, very far down a dark road. All right, continuing on. So fallen angels, they're bound under the earth until judgment. So in Enoch 10:15 it says, to Michael likewise the Lord said, go and announce his crime to Simjaza and to the others who are with him, who have been associated with the women. So this is Simjaza and the other angels who fell. At this point, though, there was also another fallen angel called Azazel, and he's already been bound, and he was bound under with jagged rocks, and same thing until the judgment. But it says that all the sin will be placed on him because of what he had done. And we see that, I know people disagree with what it says about, because Yeshua, all the sin was placed on him. But which it was. He is our Redeemer from that. But Yeshua doesn't get any of the punishment for it, the eternal punishment, but Azazel will. And we can talk about that later in the Day of Atonement teaching. But moving on from there. So, Simjaza and the others who are with him, who have been associated with women, that they might be polluted with all their impurity. And when all their sons shall be slain, so they're going to see this, then they shall see the perdition of their beloved, bind them, speaking of the angels, after they see the destruction of their sons, the Nephilim, 70 generations under the earth, even to the day of judgment and consummation, until the judgment, the effect of which will last forever, be completed. So after that judgment, it's all done, it's all complete, and we go into eternity. But these angels are waiting for that judgment. But some of them are released, and we see in the book of Revelation, it says that these angels that were bound are being released, okay, for a day and a time and an hour. But not until then. And all the angels right now are doing what they're supposed to do, or else the same thing will happen to them. They will be bound. So that's why we don't see fallen angels right now, but there are evil spirits roaming the earth. They don't multiply, and there's only a certain number of them, and they were from before the flood. They were the spirits that came out of the Nephilim. And we're going to see who these Nephilim were, and these angels. All right, and so giants perish, but Noah has hope in him. So in the book of Wisdom, which is in the Apocrypha, so that was part of your Bible, again, for 1,500 years, until they started taking it out. It says, nevertheless, thou wouldest not that the works of thy wisdom should be idle, and therefore do men commit their lives to a small piece of wood. He's talking about the ark. And passing the rough sea in a weak vessel, they were saved. So they were saved in the ark, which is also a picture of the resurrection, and I will talk about that in another teaching. For in the old time also, when the proud giants perished. Okay, so here again, it's talking about those giants, the Nephilim, that died before the flood. The hope of the world governed by thy hand. So this is saying the hope. Noah had hope of the world being governed by thy hand. Whose hand? God's hand. Who's God's right hand? It's Yeshua. And that's the hope that we have, is for him to return and rule the earth for 1,000 years, when there will be finally peace and rest. All right? It says that he escaped in a weak vessel and left all ages a seed of generation, a seed of that hope and that belief that Yeshua will return, and those that believe will receive the Ruach HaKodesh. Anyway, amen. Thank you, God. All right, so we're almost there. Last slide till we get into some of these pictures, I think. So in 1 Peter 3:19 it says, by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison. Remember the spirits in prison? It's those angels that were bound, which sometimes were disobedient when once the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was preparing. Therein few, that is 8 souls, were saved by water. Right? We're saved by water is to the baptism. It's a picture of being death to life. Same thing with before the flood, it was death, and after that, life. Why? Because there was evil only continually in their hearts. And then afterwards, there was Noah, who had faith and hope, and who was righteous before God, because he chose the good and resisted the evil. And he believed in the sun, the hand reigning. So here, these spirits are in prison. Okay, and what we just read, all of that. So keep that in mind. So let's look at all the evidence after the flood, what we have today. But before we do, I want to make this statement. In Revelation 9:20, it says, and the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues did not repent of their works of their hands, nor give up worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood, which cannot see or hear or walk. They were worshiping demons. Now I'm going to make a statement that many people might be offended by, and many people that are not in the Bible but might be into megalithic structures are probably watching this video, and you may be of other religions around the world. But I'm going to make a statement that please don't be angry, but let's look at the evidence, and let's see if this is the case. My belief is that many of these ancient religions that are around the world who claim to have built these megalithic sites are in fact a result of the megalithic site themselves. Meaning, like I said before, that they were all created before the flood. And the watchers taught men knowledge, and they carved these things into the stones. And we see all these things that were a pre-flood world, a pre-flood civilization. But after the flood, after Babel, they were spread out on the world, and these people went and found themselves cities, like we saw of Arphaxad's son. He went to find himself a city that was already built. It was megalithic, and there was writing carved in the stone, and he knew how to read it. We don't today. He was taught how to read it because Noah would have known. But not everybody else. Maybe only the righteous knew. But so with that said, when they went to find these places, they saw all these demigods, what have you, carved in stone on the wall, and they created a religion based around it. Rather than them building these things for their religion, they found these things and they worshipped these demons that were written in stone, and these demigods, these fallen angels and their sons, and they built their religions around them. So that is my belief of where these ancient religions came from, because many people will say to me, well, my religion goes back 10,000 years, or our history goes back 10,000 years. And we'll talk about the dating here in a minute, but please don't be angry with that. I believe that the Bible and the Word of God is true, and it is not a religion. It's a relationship with the God who created all men, and it is about walking out this life and why we're having to go through it and what is in store for us at the end. But there is a battle that's going on in the heavens as well as our hearts, and we have to fight it. And because of that, the Bible is instructions to us. It is not a religion, and we've made it a religion. And all these other religions around the world, most of them, I believe, have come from what they found written on the walls. So let's go through and see. All right, so let's talk about the dating real quick. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. What everybody's going to tell you is this is 10,000 years old. They built it, and for some reason they went behind and buried it. Okay, that was the mainstream idea for a while, and they stuck with it. As you can see, it's megalithic in nature, but why would they bury it, and how? That's a monumental task to do that. So if you look here, we're going to see some things around the world too that are similar to Göbekli Tepe. But that's the narrative that they held for a while, is that it was built 10,000 years ago and buried. But then came along Karen Tepe. which is just like it, but they say, oh, it's older, it's 12,000 years, but it's buried too. So why do they keep burying these places? How did they do it? And are they really 10,000 years old? I'm not going to get too into the teachings of dating. That's not what I want to do here, but I will make a statement. With carbon dating and all these other dating, yes, there's so many teachings, whether they're right or wrong. But what I want you to keep in mind is that nobody talks about this, that let's say, for instance, that carbon dating and the other types of dating are 100% accurate. They're not assuming that the world was always the same in our atmosphere. And so at any point, if the atmosphere had changed, which we know it was, 35% oxygen, we know it was different at one point. And we see calendars around the world change at different times. Why would their calendars be changing if the atmosphere and things weren't changing as well? So with that said, just because maybe a carbon dating and these things disappear at certain, carbon dating, they assume that it would always work, that it works the way it does now. And we can't assume that. So with the dating, even when they've carbon dated some of these things, you can find the teachings everywhere. They miss the carbon dating for Mount St. Helens was way off, for lava and trees is off. There's a lot of that stuff out there. But again, they don't assume, they just assume that the atmosphere has always been the same. So their test in a different atmosphere may show different results. And so we don't know that because we don't live for thousands and thousands of years. Okay, so keep that in mind, the dating. Also, here's some more pictures of Karen Tepe, but I just want to keep it PG, so cover some things up there. But you see that guy standing there, this is in Turkey. We see this, look where his hands are and how he's positioned, his arms are his side. Well, we see this all over the world, right? Göbekli Tepe had it, Karen Tepe. Indonesia, we see this guy doing the same thing. Easter Island, we see them doing it, and also in Urfa, Turkey. So all around the world. How do these things get all around the world? What else is all around the world? There's pyramids. You've probably seen this picture out there before, but there's pyramids all over the earth, all over the world. Many similar designs, we see in Mexico, Egypt, and New Zealand. We see them all around the world. Many similar designs. Here you see pyramids from Mexico, Egypt, Cambodia, very similar. I've been to the Mexico and Egypt pyramids. I've not yet been to Cambodia, but I would like to go. We also see them in Belize and other places in all over Mexico, all over the world. Pyramids, more pyramids, all over the world. But the funny thing is people think that the pyramids are so magnificent, and they are. If you ever go to Cairo and stand next to the Great Pyramid, your pictures just don't do it justice. You're in awe. It's just huge and amazing. But there's so many other megalithic things around the world besides the pyramids. But here's more pyramids. China, Mexico, Egypt, Indonesia, Turkey, United States. United States, though, has very... I don't tend to put that on the megalithic side because what we found here just... it's not megalithic to me yet, and I believe there's a reason why there's not a lot of megaliths found in the United States. There is a large concentration of dinosaurs found in the United States, and I believe that that's probably why, because people weren't here, so the dinosaurs came here, or the people weren't here because the dinosaurs were here, one or the other. But that was before the flood. And so France, Canary Islands, Italy, all over the world again. And there's just another picture of those close up from Mexico and Africa and Asia. All right, polygonal masonry. Again, this is found all over the earth in many places. South America, Egypt, Easter Island, Sacsayhuaman. It's also found in Peru and Japan, Italy, Turkey, Egypt again. Peru, Egypt. So there's that picture on the right. I'll show you another closer up picture here in a second. But here, if you're looking at the Sphinx, just to the left there is that temple, which, if you saw those earlier pictures, was completely buried in sand. But this is what they found when they unburied is polygonal masonry and these large stones. And here's a picture of my daughters trying to push it over. And then you can see this, just the size of these things and what was in those slots and stuff. I don't know. But this was all buried and they had to uncover it. And it started in the 1920s. And this is what they uncovered. Now also with that, if you're looking from the left of the Sphinx, from that temple going up the causeway to the pyramid, right up about here, there's a picture of the layout and this area right here. This is where they found the shaft, right? And they talked about this for years, and there was books written on it, but the Egyptian government said it didn't really exist. It's now open. You can tour it. It's expensive, so if you put a lot of people pitch in, you can go into it. But here's some kind of what it looks like underneath there. And again, they're still finding things like this all over Egypt. Okay, and here's just a picture I took of inside the pyramid, whether it's a tomb or whatnot. It really looks like some sort of a machine to me, with all these markings and stuff and slides and rolling things that used to be in there. But whatever you believe they're for, I believe they were pre-flood. And there's the evidence of that, the saltwater stuff they've found, many other things. Egypt's buried. It looks like a dry lake bed. But that's what it looks like today. Just remember that it was one time flooded and buried. And so here's some pictures all over Egypt that you find of things that were buried and had to be dug up. And more pictures, right? So ancient, this is what they found when they started taking pictures of it, right? This isn't just cataclysm and destruction from war, like they might say. This is a worldwide flood that did this, and it's the evidence is all here. Here's some pictures from Iraq, right? You see these things all the time. They say from Babylon. They were buried, and we don't ever see that. We just see them standing in museums or whatnot, or uncovered, but they were very buried. And you can even see, we'll talk about that top left picture. If you look to the left, you can see the guy with that handbag. We'll talk about those in a minute, but very buried in some older pictures. Again, very buried. And not only that, we are finding cities and other things underneath the ocean, underneath the water. In Alexandria, Egypt, right there under the ocean. But they just say that's from the tide rising. Okay, fine, whatever, but it was still under the ocean. So more Egypt, more buried, and you see megalithic stones. They have to be dug up. Easter Island, buried. And you can see that they polygonal masonry, buried. I show that picture down there under the water. I've been told that that's actually was made for a movie set and not actually one of the Moai under the water. But they built one under there. I don't know if that's true or not, but what I want you to take away from this is they didn't know they had bodies for a while. They thought they were just heads until they started to dig them up, because digging things up is a monumental task. Okay, and here's some they've painted, so very ornate. And then if you look here, the bottom left picture, you can see this is one that's not even finished and people taking a picture of it. So you can see how large these things are. And they are all over the island. In that bottom right picture, you can see that they're buried. How did they get buried? Well, and knocked over. Some of them are upside down. Some are face down or laying on their back. How did that happen? Well, a worldwide flood did it. Here's Pumapunku. This is, they say, the mud flood, right? The lake up there, that it overflowed and flooded this area. It's funny how all these places are flooded and they just blame it on local flooding. But it's all over the world. That's why archaeology has to do archaeological digs, because they got to dig it up because it's buried. So, Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. Here's some older pictures. You can see, if you look at that one down in the very bottom center, how buried it was, and they had to dig this stuff up. So very buried, and they are digging it up. All over the world, many of these places need to be dug up, but it's expensive, it's a lot of work, and just like Petra, they've said, you know what, we're just going to leave it. We've dug up enough, and that's it. So they're not digging up any more of it. Maybe they will in the future, or maybe they have since then, but last time I was there, they were saying that they're not going to do it. But maybe they have, I don't know. And so megalithic things that, how did they make these? What did they use them for? And they're just left all over the place, and there's destruction all over and evidence of worldwide flood. and more of them. I believe this is in India here. And so here's some more from around the world, right? We got Indonesia, India, Cambodia, all these places that they don't know who built them, why they built them, how they built them, but yet they're evidence of flood, they're buried, and evidence of destruction. So here's one that I want to take a real quick and talk about. This is Kailash Temple from my visit there. This is in India. If you ever get to go, the flights might be a little expensive getting there, but once you get there, the trip is very cheap, and everything in India is very inexpensive. Everybody's very friendly. Some places there's a little bit of crime you got to watch out for, but most of the part it's a great place to go visit, and the food is amazing. All right, but I want to talk about Kailash Temple is over 100 feet high, and this is the main temple of this area. There's 34 caves, and it goes on for maybe a mile or more miles. It's pretty big. I was worn out from walking, and I didn't even get through all of it, and it took me all day. So I'd like to go back again one time to go through all of it, and if you ever do, go there twice and break it up into 2 days. But again, what I want to talk about, it's over 100 feet high. Now I want you to look at Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore is only 60 feet high, and I can't remember the numbers for that. It took them 40 years to build, or 15 years, I can't remember, but with dynamite and jackhammers. Okay, they claim the Kailash Temple was built with chisels. Okay, so if it took these guys half a lifetime to build Mount Rushmore with dynamite and jackhammers, come on. But what's important that I want you to look at is look at Mount Rushmore in the bottom right picture. All the debris that they cut away from this thing is still there. And look how much debris is there. The reason they don't move it, it's a huge task, and it would cost millions to get rid of it. Where did all of this debris from the Kailash Temple? We'll look at some more pictures of Kailash area and the Ellora Caves, because it's all one, Kailash and Ellora Caves. But the amount of debris that came out of there is probably 1,000 times, and that's probably being generous, more than what you see at Mount Rushmore. It's probably 10,000 times more. Where did it go? Did it get washed away in a worldwide flood, or did they have a technology that we don't have today to get rid of it? People don't think about that. I mean, this is just one cave. If you look at the bottom left picture around the caves, and you can see how deep in it goes and how ornate it is. This stuff is not stacked stone at Kailash Temple. It is all one stone that they carved out of bedrock, and it is so detailed. And I'll show you some more pictures here later. But here's another picture of the Kailash Temple from the top. Now, last time I was here, they don't allow you anymore to go up there. I don't know if somebody fell or jumped or whatnot, but I don't know. I hope they open it back up, because it's beautiful views and stuff, and you can see around. But you can go just to the right of it. There's another little cutout area that is megalithic that you can go sit in. All right, just here's some more pictures, better pictures to see the size of this thing and how you can see there's no stacked stone here. This is all one stone that they carved deep down into the bedrock. And so where did all the debris go, and how did they do this? It is 40 or 15 years. I mean, they'll tell you that they did it with chisels. It just didn't happen. All right, so that's just me showing you that these 3 levels are standard people-sized levels. Okay, so whatever the giants didn't go in these, this was just for the regular people. And again, these people would have been 1,000 years old. They would have been smarter. They would have retained more knowledge than we do. And they also had the information and knowledge from the angels that they weren't supposed to have, which the Bible said was worthless knowledge. So here's a picture of the Kailash Temple. If you look at that big square there off to the middle right, it says 16. That's the Kailash Temple. That's the main one. But you can see these caves go off to the right, and way off to the left they fork and make a Y. There's beautiful waterfalls and lakes through here, but there's 34 caves. So there's a lot to see, and you can see it takes quite a bit of walking, 20-minute walks and 15-minute walks just from different areas where you are. All right, let's move on. So again, more stuff buried, evidence of a flood. I believe that bottom left picture is, I can't remember whose tomb that was that they found, but that's how they found it, on the side like that, buried. dumped over. How did it get there? All right, more evidence of flood all around the world. And there's another picture of his tomb as they pull it out. And again, more flood, buried, not just by sand, but by rock, debris, and rubble. Again, flood, more flood, not just Egypt or Mexico or India, and it's all over. But let's look at Mexico. So this is the Pyramid of the Moon, Pyramid of the Sun, and the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent in Teotihuacan, Mexico. This is right outside of Mexico City. I think it's about an hour drive if I remember. But this is what it used to look like. Just farmland, hills. They would drive through them and they didn't know much about it. But when they dug it up, this is what they found. And so this place was a little bit more than what they expected. And same thing if you go to Chichen Itza. So again, Teotihuacan on the left and top right. But this is what Chichen Itza, Mexico looked like. So very similar to Teotihuacan until they started to dig it up. So top right is Chichen Itza, what they found. And this is what it looks like today on the bottom right. But what most people don't realize is that if you look at the picture to the left, they're still digging up more that's underneath it. Where did all that rubble and rock come from? Did they bury that? No, a worldwide flood buried it. They'll keep telling you that these places bury it, but they don't. All right, so all over Mexico as well, we see these hills and stuff like that, and they've looked at them from LiDAR. And it's not just in Mexico, it's Belize and Guatemala and all over that southern area of North America. And they find these places with LiDAR, but it's so expensive to undo them. Literally, when I was driving around the Yucatan, my tour guide was pointing out and saying, look, there's another ancient site that it's buried and we just don't have the money to dig it up. There's just too many of them in Mexico. So they've decided, just like Petra, we're just going to leave some of them. And people will go and try to find stuff there and everything else. But it's a lot of work. Even if you were going to try and go sneaky and dig them up, good luck. It's going to take you with a shovel a very long time. But with LiDAR now, they're finding these on the ocean floors and all over the world, these cities that are buried. So here's some more older pictures of Egypt. That top right one cracks me up. If you go there, you can see how buried that thing was. It's not that buried today, but you would never know that going there, that this was once completely buried. But they don't tell you that, right? They don't want you to know that, even my brothers and sisters that are doing these megalithic channels around the world, they'll say some stuff like, over time the sand, blew and covered it, and that's just not the case. A worldwide flood covered these things, and this earth is not as old as what people are saying. The Bible is telling us the actual evidence. So let's take a look at Saqqara here. When you enter Saqqara, this is where you enter, and the step pyramid is off to the right, but inside that step pyramid now you can go inside it, and you can see this solid cut down into the bedrock. And whatever's down there, I don't know. I know some of my brothers and sisters in these megalithic channels will know. I didn't really look inside it. When I was there, they didn't have it open, but you can take tours down there at the bottom now. But what I want to point out is these holes like this square hole, are found all over Egypt. They were buried because it's the start of a pyramid. And how they start it is with a long shaft going straight down, and then they build to the left and the right of the shaft, or they build this square hole, and then later they build the pyramid up on top of it. So you find these holes all over the place because they are pyramids that never got finished. And you can see one here to the left, and many people believe that they used these for the grain silos in the times of Joseph. And I would kind of agree that they probably did do that, but they didn't dig them. They were already there, and they just found ways to fill them and get down to the bottom of them. And you can see the pictures there. There was stairways, and they would build up the sides, just stacked stones. But those are not megalithic cut stones. but you can see kind of down at the bottom, it is bedrock that's cut into them. And so here's one. If you're at Saqqara, if you're ever there, go walk just to the outside of it, just south of it a little bit, and you're going to find these holes all over the place. And here's one with this, I don't know if it's a sarcophagus or what it is at the bottom. I've asked some of my megalithic brethren, and they don't know either. And the people I've asked, I don't know if they've tried to open it or what it is, or if it's an unfinished box that's all you see there. But anyway, I'd like to know, and that is much deeper than you think. The picture doesn't do it justice, but that sucker is deep. And if you do go there, there's only about a 3-foot wall that's covering it, so be careful. All right, but talking about those sarcophagus, same place in Saqqara, just a little ways away from the step pyramid. They were out in the desert. If you're ever there, it just looks flat, and then all of a sudden there's this hole in the ground that you go in, and there's a door. And there's this underground tomb area, which they call a tomb area. But there's all these sarcophagus in there, and they're megalithic in size. And the writing that you see to the right, everybody is in agreement that the original builders didn't put that on there. Somebody tried to scribble that on there. And same thing with these sarcophagus. One was found in Alexandria, Egypt, and this was just a couple of years ago, actually. Why? Because it was buried by a worldwide flood. And you can see how buried it was right there. They were trying to, working in an apartment area, and they were doing some construction, digging down, and they found this thing. Well, when they found it, they didn't know what they were going to find, and they opened it, because I don't believe they found many or any, if at that or any that may have had stuff in them. But when they opened this one, they found 3 skeletons in there. One man, one woman, and another man with a crushed skull and a wound to the head. I just find that interesting. Maybe sometime, if anybody reaches out, I'll talk to you and give you my thoughts of maybe who that was. All right. So let's leave Egypt for a minute and let's go over to India. This is Shandi or Chandi Sambrisi or Sambisari in India. So this is, I want you to look at this little temple here, in the very top of it, there's this little nub on the top. So originally, this is the work as they're excavating it, because yes, it was buried again by a worldwide flood. You can see it's not just debris or local flooding. This thing was buried by a flood. Okay, Shandi Sambrisi. And here's some pictures after they got done digging it up. But this is what it looked like before they found it. A farmer actually hit it, I think, with his plow, that little nub at the very top, and he thought it was a rock, and he tried to dig it up, and he kept digging, and he found the top of this thing. But again, this happens all over in India as well, all over the world, that there are these megalithic sites that are buried. And so this is what it looks like today. And you can see how deep down they had to dig in that little part that was sticking up. Okay, again, there's the name. And then this is what's inside. It's a lingam. And these are all over India and Indonesia and those areas. Maybe not Indonesia, but Cambodia. But they were, I don't know what they're used for. They don't know what they're used for. They worship them, right? The Bible talks about them, people worshiping stone. They worship them, and they don't know what they are. I will say they very much look like a phallic symbol, and they will probably tell you that they are. But they all look kind of like a juice press. But whatever comes off of it, whatever liquid comes out of it, they collected. Okay, and you'll see another one here in a minute from the Kailash temple. I'll show you that one. And that's in Shandi Sambrisi. So here are some more lingams. There's thousands of them all over India and Cambodia and stuff, like I said. But the one in the top middle with the flowers on it, that's the one that's inside the Kailash temple. And you can see that there's a spout that goes out. And when you're there at the temple, I didn't put a picture on here. I forgot to do that. But I'm going to do subsequent videos for all of these places. And we'll go a little bit more in depth. They're going to be short videos. for my megalithic brethren to show kind of the evidence for the Bible and for the flood that these were pre-biblical or pre-biblical flood. But it goes out, and then there's a stone cup on the outside of the temple there that collects whatever liquid they come off of these things. But again, those are all over. Okay, and here's some pictures of, in the very middle, it just shows something coming out of this lingam. I find it interesting. It's like the, because we come from a phallic symbol, right? The seed that comes out. And when you go to Kailash Temple, if you start on the very outsides of the caves, it's all the artwork is of just regular people, and then all of a sudden the people start getting bigger, and then you start seeing half man, half animal people, and people with with multiple arms and all these things, until you get to the Kailash Temple. And then at the Kailash Temple, you're seeing this war between all these beings. And when I do my teaching on the Kailash Temple, I'll show you that. But I just wanted to point that out, that it's almost like what the Bible says, that we went from just being men, and then we got this knowledge, and then there's these beings that start coming out that are not what God intended. All right, so that's the Kailash Temple. Let's move on to another place in India real quick to show you. This is Rani Ki Vav in Patan, India. The picture to the left there is what they found, and I think they started this excavation. Oh man, I'll be more accurate when I do these. My mind's not thinking right now. But anyway, it was the early 1900s, maybe the 60s, I think, or something, late 19th. I don't know. But anyway, they had to start digging this up, and I think they began it. This is what it looked like then, but they started to really dig it up in the 80s, I think. So this is what it starts looking like as they're digging it up. You can see all these megalithic stones, and it was destroyed, right? And then if you look down at the bottom of this picture, you see a guy standing, so you can see the size of this thing. Again, there's multiple layers of this that go deep down into the earth. And they dug all this out. This is what they found. So how did it get buried? Was it a local flood? No, it was a worldwide flood. And you see how deep down that goes, and that's a pool down there at the bottom. And this is what it looks like. So it looks small, but you can see, again, they had to dig it up. All right, let's talk about some similarities around the world. So India, this is at the Kailash Temple. You can see the striations there. Top right picture, you'll see them again. Same thing. The way that they go, it's weird, the angles, but all the angles are the same that we see in Jordan, in Egypt, in India, in China, all around the world. So these construction techniques were known by everybody, but they just designed things differently. Like us today, our construction techniques are the same, but we just have different designs, how we build our house, the way we like it, the way our culture is, right? If you go to some other places in the world, they build houses much different, but it's their culture. But they still use the same construction techniques. Some of them are a little bit different, and that's what we see around the world here. And so this was all pre-flood, before the biblical flood. And here's, remember we talked about in Egypt that you start building these pyramids with this shaft in the ground. Well, here's one of these shafts that never got finished. Right, it's north of Abu Rawash in Egypt. It's probably about, I don't know, maybe a half hour or hour north of maybe not even that, half hour north of the Giza pyramids. I've never been actually able to go here because they won't let you in. But if you look at this bottom left picture, you can see those same striations there as well. But it was military when I went, and I think you can do tours now if you work it out with the Egyptian government. And there's some tour groups that will go to these places. But there's those striations. And these protuberances or protrusions, they're all over the world as well. And polygonal masonry. So here they are, all over the world. Again, all over the world. And all over the world, India, Peru, Egypt. All over the world. And this one in India, the bottom left, I took that picture there that's at the Lonar crater, which is beautiful, that area. But there's many of these places in India. Like when I went to the Lonar crater, Nobody ever goes there because there's so many places. But I just happened to be in this area, and I was like, you know what? I want to find any of the stuff that's here, because I mean, you throw a rock and you're going to hit a megalithic site in India. And so I went here, and they were filming a movie there, and the people of this town had never seen a person that was actually white before. I was asking my tour guide, my driver, I said, you know, what's going on? And he said they've never seen a real person with white skin. That's how remote it was. And so they stopped filming, and the director and the actresses and the actors came over to meet me and stuff, and they took pictures with me, and I was like, wow, I feel like a celebrity. But they were very nice, and it was a beautiful area to just watch the kids and everybody playing in the water out there. So anyway, if you get a chance to go to India, it's a cheap trip. Same thing with Egypt. It's not very expensive. Some of the tours are, yes, but you can actually go to these places and just rent a driver that will take you around, or you rent a car yourself in some of these countries, get the insurance, and just go wherever you want to go. And it's very inexpensive. In Egypt, Jordan as well, if you ever want to go there, just give me a holler, and I'll tell you some of the tricks to do cheaper things there. But anyway, all right, moving on. So here we go again. These protrusions or protuberances, they are all over the world. This is the pictures I took in Egypt to show you. There's the one inside the, after the Grand Gallery, before the King's Chamber. If you look up, you'll see there's a nub there. What it's for, I don't know. And like the Bible said, that this knowledge that the angels showed to man, they were never supposed to know. And so I don't believe that we're supposed to find out what all these things were for. I know many of us want to. But what I want is to prove that what the Bible says is true. And I believe that these things give evidence to the worldwide flood. Also, there's these things, dolmens all over the earth. They look like dog houses. How they built them, why they built them, we don't know. Did people use them? We don't know. Stone spheres and stone clay jars, you find those all over the world as well. Different places. Keystones, those are found all over the world. All over the world. But nobody knows how to replicate this stuff, right? The sphinxes, these what they might call seraphim, which I don't think are seraphim. I think there's something else, but we find these pictures of them all over the world. Here's that handbag, right? We find this all over the world too. There's India, and half man, men with wings, 2 wings, 4 wings, half man, half eagle with 2 wings and 4 wings, holding this pine cone and this bag. And we find that, here he goes, another picture, better picture of that. Now, what I want to talk about this too is, right, this tree. I find it interesting that there's this tree. Now, the Bible talks about seraphim and cherubim and stuff. Some of them have 4 wings, and some of them have 6 wings. And we also see here one that has 2 wings. And we see they all wear these clothes with these tassels on them, and it goes around the borders of their clothes, and there's a band above that goes all the way around all the 4 corners of their garment. I find it interesting. So I believe that what you're seeing here is not a Nephilim, but maybe are these the fallen angels? Is this what they looked like? Right? Did they have, because the Bible talks about them having wings. Yeshua didn't have wings, but he was able to ascend and fly. But it didn't show him having wings that we could see. They didn't write about those things. But are these fallen angels that came down? Because we see that they have these wings. I don't know. I'm not saying that they are. I'm just wondering. But people might be saying, well, you can see the cuneiform writing there. That we know that cuneiform writing was from like King Cyrus and them. Well, I don't believe that whoever carved these things in the stone, these pictures, I don't believe that they put the cuneiform in there. I think that came later. And why that is because there's also other languages from this area that don't have anything to do with cuneiform and that are carved in stone. So again, you see these better pictures. There's the handbag, the whatever that acorn looking thing is, and these guys have wings. So is this just art, or did they really see beings and things that looked like this? And here we see one with 6 wings off to the left. And it talked about the angels worshiping, and having the omens of the sun, moon, and the stars because they had the worthless knowledge. And you see these things here, and there's the sun, the moon, and the star. And again, here's this giant man and these regular sized people. And again, there's cuneiform there, but was that always there? And the sun, the moon, and the stars, right? And it's depicting beings up above. And again, half man, half animal beings. We find these all over the world carved. Giants, half man, half animal, and winged beings. How can this be if it's art and it's found all around the world? Not everybody is going to depict their kings in this manner. Maybe I could see one culture, but they didn't have internet and phones and TV that they would see these things around the world. And so how did that information go unless they're actually seeing these things? And like these books said, that they were destroyed before the flood. And that's why we don't find their bones today, is because they were destroyed before the flood. All right, so let's wrap this up real quick and run through some of this. I'll do teachings on, there's thousands of these places around the world, so I can do weekly content on that, but just to show you some of these, there's stuff all over. So there's Malta on the left, there's India at the Vitala ruins, and here we have the Kailash temple in India. More from India. Of course, there's pictures there that I have to cut out for children. If you ever do go to India, you're going to see many things that have to do with sexuality and bestiality, and like that's where the Kama Sutra comes from. I believe it's because they found these things carved in stone, and the Bible says that what they were doing before the flood was wicked. You also see pictures of them cutting heads off, doing things that they shouldn't be doing, all around the world. So there's the Ellora Caves off to the left. Those are what's connected to the Kailash Temple. And like I said, there's 34 caves there, and they're just magnificent. You can look at some of those pictures. There's the Ajanta Caves. I visited those as well. There's Barbar Caves in India, the Baha Caves in India. Like I said, you can't throw a stone. There's thousands of these places in India. Bedsa Caves in India, and I'm probably totally corrupting these names, but just more in India. You can see, you can pause and take a look at these. I'm just going through quick. More in India, 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 India, India. Here's China, the Yangshan Quarry in China. More Lashan in China. Longmen Caves, China. Longyu Caves, China. We looked at the striations in there that match the striations around the world. And megalithic in size. If you look at some of these pictures, how just ginormous these things are. Peru. More in Peru. Bolivia. Bosda Caves, Turkey. More in Turkey. Kanos, Turkey. Midas, Kent, Turkey. More in Turkey. Mount Nimrut, Turkey. So we find these things again. They're everywhere. Derinkuyu, Turkey. It's a whole city carved into the stone. Now this one in Japan on the right, they're still debating whether or not that was actually carved or if it's a natural stone. Whatever you think. I just thought I'd throw that on there. Afghanistan, we find them there as well. Again, nobody knows how these were built or why they built them or how they built them. There's always stories, but even the archaeological story doesn't match with the local story, and there's no evidence for those actual who did it. Okay, Sudan, the pyramids there. There's Malta. Indonesia. You know, some of these, I think it's Borobudur. No, it's not Borobudur, but there's these cities that they didn't even, they heard about them, but they didn't know that they existed, and they found them. And you can just see, if you look at these pictures, they were once destroyed, and they had to put them back together. These didn't look like this when they found them. They were completely destroyed, buried, and they had to dig stuff up and put it back together like Legos. Okay, more in India or Indonesia and Cambodia. And anybody that you talk to that goes to these places, they're just going to be in awe and how did they do this? More Cambodia, more in Cambodia, and you can see the destruction. Some of these places are just still left like that because they can't put them back together. They're buried by a worldwide flood. All right, so the last megaliths I want to talk about for today is the Desert Caves in China. And this is a scene, again, they don't know who did it, why they did it, or how they did it, but they do paint this area, so that's why it's painted. But it's called Garden to Solid Bedrock. It's a very big area too. But what I want you to see here, this scene, is these people are killing people. There's half animal, half man beings, and weird looking beings, but they're killing regular human beings and they're feeding them to these people up top, and you're going to see this. And this is carved all through here. Just take a look at these pictures in depth. Like I said, I'll try to do very good video quality so you can see these. But even here you can see those same striations. If you look off to the left and right at places, you'll see them that we see all over the earth. And there's megalithic, very big stone cut here as well. But here you can see, I'll do another an individual video on this one too later with more pictures. But here you can see one guy's getting stabbed, one guy's getting rolled up, one guy's getting thrown into something. Here this guy's getting stabbed. You can see guys in the top left, they're getting cooked, and they're going to be served to these people sitting at the table. You can see he's making dinner. Same thing here. And again, that guy's getting wheeled out and crushed. And you can see very large people, regular sized people, and all these different sizes, and half man, half animal people. So I wanted to show that, right, because it says that that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and the thoughts of his heart was evil only continually. So let's run through these quick scriptures to end this, right? That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. And they said, and you have said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. And we saw it was only about 120 years that the angels were able to corrupt the earth, and they would build all these megalithic cities and teach them these things. And why I believe that's important is because at the time just before the flood, knowledge increased significantly. And that's what the book of Daniel says, that in our time, knowledge will increase significantly. And it's in our day. We are the generation of increased knowledge, and it is doubling and tripling, quadrupling, just astronomically. Goes on to say, then there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare them children, them the same mighty men which were men of renown. So all these books that talk about angels coming down and producing these children that were not what they were supposed to be, these demigods, I believe that that's exactly what happened, and that's what the evidence around the world shows. And we hide it and we trick people by saying millions of years or tens of thousands of years when we don't know the dating is accurate. There's no way that it's 100% accurate. And even then, we have a history book, the Bible, that tells us exactly what happened before the flood. So with that, let's read some from Enoch before we close. Then they took wives, each choosing for himself whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incantations, and the dividing of roots and trees. And women conceiving brought forth giants. Goes on to say, and then the Lord said to me, Enoch, scribe of righteousness, go tell the watchers of heaven who have deserted the lofty sky and their holy everlasting station, who have been polluted with women, and have done as the sons of men do, by taking to themselves wives, and who have been greatly corrupted on the earth. Therefore have you forsaken the lofty and holy heaven, which endures forever, and have lain with women, have defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and have taken to yourselves wives, have acted like the sons of the earth, and have begotten impious offspring. You, being spiritual and holy, and possessing life which is eternal, because that which is spirit is eternal, have polluted yourselves with women, have begotten in carnal blood, have lusted in the blood of men, and have done as those who are flesh and blood do. These, however, die and perish. Therefore have I given to them wives, that they might cohabit with them, that the sons might be born to them, and that this might be transacted upon the earth. But you from the beginning were made spiritual, possessing a life which is eternal, and not subject to death, forever. Angels are eternal. Therefore I made not wives for you, because being spiritual your dwelling is in heaven. But they left that dwelling. They left it to have wives. That's why they weren't given wives. Now that is what Yeshua is referring to, this very scripture right here. When Yeshua is talking about, they're asking him a question about the resurrection, and the 7 brothers that have the one wife. All the brothers die, and they keep marrying the same wife, and they say, in the resurrection, whose wife will she be? And Yeshua says they err, not knowing the scriptures. For they shall neither marry nor be given in marriage. Okay, that part right there we can find from the Old Testament, that the authority of a woman is her father until she's given in marriage. That authority is then passed to the husband. Not to every man, but to the husband. So we can find that in Scripture. But the next part, it's only found in the book of Enoch right here, where he goes on to say they shall be like the angels in heaven, for they neither marry nor are given in marriage. This is the only place that you're going to find what Yeshua is talking about right here. And when Yeshua casts out the demons, you're only going to find that question that they're asking them in the book of Enoch. So we've cast these things away for far too long, and the evidence is there that we need to get back into them and see what the truth actually says and what's going on. All right, it continues with Jude. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, right, under the earth, is what Enoch said, until the judgment of the great day. So the Bible and the book of Enoch are in concert with each other. They agree. And lastly, it says, and Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented Yahweh that he had made man on the earth, and it did grieve him in his heart. So he flooded the earth. Now let's leave with this. For this they are willingly ignorant, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. So the evidence is there for a worldwide flood, and all these megalithic sites around the world were destroyed by it. The earth is not billions or 10,000 years old. It is only 6,000 years old. But it says that those in the end will be willingly ignorant that the flood destroyed the earth. And we see the evidence for it all over. The last thing I was going to leave you with, I told you I would, is the masculine and feminine waters. So in Revelation, remember, it says that the waters are peoples, multitudes, tongues, and nations. And in 2nd Ezra, it says that there is a multitude of angels. And so when we look at that scripture from Enoch, and the waters shall be joined with the waters, and the waters above are masculine, and the waters beneath are feminine, and they shall destroy all who dwell on the earth. So because of that union of the male angels coming down and mixing with the female waters, or women, the feminine waters, the earth was destroyed because of what had happened, and those who dwell under the ends of the heaven. So that's going to be finishing up day 2. We talked about the bubble in the sky. We talked about the waters above coming down and mixing with the waters below, the feminine, and how all these megalithic sites around the world are pre-flood. And we will go into those and do each individual sites. There's thousands of them So I'll do quick videos on them to show you guys photos, because I know that there are people out there that love the Bible and love to see this megalithic stuff as I do. And so, again, I don't believe we're supposed to know what it all was used for, but I do believe we're supposed to know that it was created and done by the knowledge of the angels, and that the people lived to be 1,000 years old. So there we go. And that bet is the angels didn't keep their habitation, right? Our habitation was changed, and the angels kept not their habitation. That bet means habitation or home or dwelling place. All right. So remember, the first 2,000 years was the age of creation, chaos, and the flood. The next 2,000 years we're going to get into, we're going to start talking about physical Israel, and the age of Torah, and the age of the letter of the law. And then we're going to get into the age of the Gentiles, and the age of the Spirit and Torah. And then we're going to see that, remember, Yeshua returned it to his place, and that it's after 2 days that he will revive us, and on the third day he will raise us up. Speaking of, day 5 and 6 is the 2 days, and then day 7 is the third day from when he returned. Not from the start of the creation week, but he came in day 4. And so for 2 days, day 5 and day 6, we're going to be smitten, and then on the third day he will raise us up. So we will be killed, right? But in the resurrection we'll be raised up. Psalms 110:1 says, and the Psalm of David, you have said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand, until I make your enemy your footstool. When Hasatan is cast down at the end of the 6th day, or 6,000 year, to the earth, because the earth is God's footstool. So when that happens, that is when Yeshua will begin his reign. It says, whom the heaven must receive until the times of restitution. I believe the earth needs to be restored as well as us, to an eternal body. And in Exodus, it says that Moses went down from the mountain, like Yeshua came down from the holy mountain, Mount Zion, to the people and sanctified the people. He sanctified us with his Ruach HaKodesh, and they washed their clothes. We washed in baptism. And said unto them, the people, be ready against the third day. Come not at your wives. Yeshua is not at his bride right now. He's left us here to help build his church. But it's on the third day that he will raise us up, and we will live in his sight. And so after that, the millennial kingdom for 1,000 years. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, Hasatan will be released, because he'll be bound at the beginning of it, where he goes out to deceive the nations, but he is destroyed and cast off forever with all darkness. And so 8th day will be eternal life, a new heaven, a new earth, no darkness, no night, no evil, no pain, no tears, no sorrow, no war, no death, no sin, no knowledge of good and evil. It'll be good and perfect, and it will be eternity. And I'll leave you this. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. Until next time, brothers and sisters, shalom.